Good morning, kiddos. All right, so here is the sheet that is kind of like our classwork that we would have done together in class. I'll go over the answer key with you here, and you can kind of use this to score your own and see how you did on it. As far as our topic today of finding out which measuring cups are going to be the ones you want to use for certain ingredients. And then on the back, once we get to it, it's going to be how did you increase your recipe to serve 60 people. All right. So first off, don't forget name, number, date. Today is 4/6/20. I always have to look now. It's hard to remember which day it actually is. All right, so directions. Here's the recipe that you guys saw in your slideshow. These are all the ingredients to serve 12 people. And the one thing that we found out is that if we have to serve 60 people, you just kind of take your multiples of 12 and it ended up 5 times, but that's for the back. On this side, all we have to do is figure out circling which fraction of a measuring cup you need for each ingredient. If you need more than one, and here's the one that maybe if you didn't read carefully, you might leave this step out, write the number alongside the measuring cup that you circled. So flour, I'm gonna go up into my recipe. I see I need 2 cups of flour. So which of these cups are you gonna use for flour? Well, if you need 2 cups, obviously you're going to circle your cup, but that's only 1 cup. The recipe calls for 2 cups. So all you had to do is write a 2 by it just to show that you needed 2 of those. All right, eggs don't go in a measuring cup, so they're not down here. Our next ingredient is sugar. I need 1 cup of sugar. So obviously I'm gonna use the cup. 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. So cornstarch gives me 1 cup, a half cup, a third cup, or a 1/4 of a cup. Well, I need a 1/4 of a cup. And again, I only needed 1 of those. So I'm just gonna circle that one. I need a half a cup of milk. So I'm gonna go to the half a cup. And then I needed 2/3 of a cup of butter. Well, 2/3, I need to figure out what's the base fraction for 2/3. Well, it's got to be broken down into 1/3. So it's not 1 cup, it's not 1/2. It's going to be 1/3. And again, I needed 2 of those. So you should have written a number 2 by there. So there's what the front of your practice sheet should look like. If you have any questions, again, you can add them in your comments for me, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Once you see this, hopefully that'll kind of clear up what you had to do for sure on it. Okay, on to the back. So it says, increase the sponge cake recipe so it will serve 60 people. So we found out together that we knew that we were gonna increase each of the ingredients 5 times over what the recipe called for. So in the original recipe, if I needed 2 cups of flour, how much am I gonna need for my increased recipe to serve 60? Well, my equation again, 2 times 5 equals 10. So that's the work to show how I needed the new quantities. So I'm gonna need 10 cups of flour for my new recipe of 60. 4 eggs. Well, if I have 4 eggs, remember I'm multiplying everything times 5 to get my new recipe of 60. So 4 times 5 equals 20. So I'm gonna need 20 eggs. That's gonna be a big recipe full. 1 cup of sugar. Well, again, to make it times 5, I'm gonna do 1 times 5 is 5. So instead of 1 cup for 12, for 60 people, I need 5 cups of sugar. And did you notice too that you can either write out the word cups or you can use the abbreviation C period for cups. Either way is perfectly fine. All right, now we get into multiplying fractions, which is what our whole unit's been about. So now I've got 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. So I have 1/4 times 5. Now remember, multiplying fractions could either be like repeated addition. So I would do 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fourths. Or if you remember the little trick that we thought about, well, it actually looks like I just take the whole number times the numerator. 5 times 1 is 5, and that's going to give me 5/4 as well. So the one thing you need to remember that as an improper fraction, we're not going to leave this 5/4. So you need to actually change that to a mixed number. And especially when you're cooking, you have to know what 5/4 is. Now, you could take 1/4 of a cup and fill it 1/4 full and dump that in, and then do a second 1/4 full and do that 5 times. That will still get you the same amount. But if you remember, if I can change this improper fraction to a mixed number, well, 4/4 is 1 whole, and from 4/4 to 5/4, there's 1/4 left over. So my actual mixed number would be 1 1/4. So instead of taking a 1/4 cup and filling it and dumping and filling and dumping 5 times, you could actually take your 1 cup, fill it full and dump it into your recipe, and then take your 1/4 cup and fill it full and dump it into your recipe, and you've filled that part of the recipe in 2 steps instead of doing it in 5 individual steps. So actually cooking has a lot to do with math. So in this case, I need 1 1/4 cups of cornstarch. Okay, a half of a cup of milk. So when I go to my equation, I have a half times 5. So again, I could either draw out 5 1/2s, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, or I know that it's the same thing as just multiplying the numerator. So I would get 5/2 cups of milk. And again, I could either take my half cup and do that 5 separate times, or I can change this improper fraction to a mixed number. So I know 2/2 is 1 whole. So I can get 1 whole, 2/2. I can get 2 wholes, 4/2. So that's actually going to be 2 with 1/2 left over. So 5/2 is really 2 1/2 cup of milk. And again, if you're not quite remember how we did this, so 2/2 equals 1 whole. So if I take 2/2 away from 5/2, that's going to equal 3/2 left. So there's 1 whole there. I can still take another 2/2 away from, why did I write 5ths? 3/2, and I could take another 2/2 away from that, and that would give me 1/2 left. So 1 whole plus 1 whole plus 1/2 equals the 2 1/2 that we got. So that's how we got that. Okay, lastly, we've got our butter. So again, our equation, 2/3 of a cup times 5 is going to equal 5 times 2 is 10/3. Now, 3/3 is my 1 whole, so I'm going to change my improper fraction. How many 3's can I get out of 10? 3, 6, 9. So that's 3 wholes, and that would be 9/3 to 10/3 is 1/3 left over. So altogether, I need 3 1/3 cup of butter. So again, this original recipe served 12. This new recipe is now going to serve 60 if we go through and use all of these new ingredients. And then here is your work that showed how we multiplied the original recipe times 5 to get it to serve those 60 people. Hopefully it was pretty okay for you to understand. If you had any questions, this video should hopefully help you with that. But if there's anything else that's still out there, just make sure you throw me comments or an email and I can answer them as I need to. Talk to you guys later. Bye.